Hello everybody. Welcome to Copenhagen PIX. My name is Jakob Neindam. I'm really pleased to welcome you all on behalf of New Danish Screen and Creative Media Industries at the University of Copenhagen to this talk about, well, what we call less is more. We could have called it be inspired. We could have called it a lot of different things. What we don't want to call it is something that relates to financing. Because what we want to talk about today is the creative challenges, for good and bad, about working the way the directors you're going to meet today have been working. And put an international perspective on some issues that at least the Danish film industry are going to be talking a lot about. They already are, and they will be even more in the coming months. To put that international perspective on that, we've asked our good friend of the festival and now critic, Neil Young, to host the day for us. So, Neil, you want to take over from here? Oh, by the way, one practical detail before you all applaud Neil. Sorry, Neil. When we enter or exit this talk in the end, there's going to be a drink. It's important that you go out on this side of the room, otherwise you won't get the drink. So really, that's really important. Neil.
Thank you, Jakob, and thank everybody for coming today. I'm going to sit down. As Jakob said, I'm a critic and programmer from the United Kingdom. I work with various film festivals around Europe, and I think one of the reasons why I was asked to do this talk today, and I'm very flattered to be asked to be back in Copenhagen, so it was nice to be in this city, especially on your special royal day of the Queen's birthday, was because one of the sections that I did at the Bradford Film Festival was called Uncharted States of America, and this ran for about 9 years, and we tried to show the best of American independent cinema, and that I distinguish from indie cinema, because in American cinema, as I'm sure you know, many Hollywood studios got into the indie business and started making kind of pseudo-arty, pseudo-low-budget films, which sometimes cost $20 and $25 million, featuring people like George Clooney and William H. Macy and Parker Posey, which are all, you know, I'm not saying they're bad films, but what I was interested in was exploring genuinely low-budget, off-radar, radical in American cinema, which is often made in the regions, which often doesn't get very much coverage in big newspapers or win awards. So what I tried to do for that section was to scour American underground film festivals in search of people who hadn't made films before, maybe films made by community groups, and that could be something that we're going to talk about later, because for me one of the interesting things about the state of Danish cinema now is, as I'm sure you're aware, the sort of funding mechanisms from the Danish Film Institute is going under a change, and the idea, as I understand it, is to fund more films but give them less money. And to me that's in a very exciting position, because it will mean that community groups or people that might not previously have thought that they would be able to get to the filmmaking process, you know, if you're bidding for €5 million, that's kind of a daunting thing. If you're bidding for €500,000, that opens things up. So as well as sort of creating limitations, it also will hopefully stimulate a more of a grassroots cinema, which, as I say, does exist in certain countries, and which in Denmark could be stimulated. So as I say, I think that's kind of why I was asked to do it, and just to explain where I come from and what my interest is, because I'm always fascinated to find out what's going on in places like Nebraska or I don't know, North Dakota, which you don't see in regular films, and also within Europe there are many areas that we don't see. I mean, how many films that we see that are set in Paris? But you know, there's a film that we have in the program, Limbo, which is filmed in Nakskov, forgive my pronunciation, which is a place in Denmark which I didn't know about, and now because I've seen the film Limbo, I know a little bit more about it. So that's one of the films we're going to be talking about later. So just to run through how it's going to work today, first of all we're going to speak to Alex Ross Perry, who's here on the jury of the festival, an acclaimed American independent filmmaker, who's got the films Impalex, The Colour Wheel, Listen Up Philip and Queen of Earth, and he is the subject of a mini retrospective at the festival. We'll be speaking to him first. Then we'll be speaking to the makers of the film Shelley, which is a very new film. In fact, it's so new it isn't even finished yet. We do have an exclusive clip from that film. We'll be speaking to the filmmakers at about 1:30. We'll then have a break where you can go off and pad your nose for 20 minutes, and then to return with a few more filmmakers. We have the makers of Limbo, which is what I mentioned, Anna-Sophia Hartmann, Petting Zoo, an American film, and The Elite, the Danish film, which I'm sure some of you have seen already. And in that section, which is going to be about 2:20, we're going to look at how locations can stimulate creativity. And then finally, at about 3 o'clock, we'll be having a more general debate with some of the other filmmakers who are with us. A filmmaker from Greece, Yannis Veslemis, again, forgive my pronunciation, with Norway. The Turkish director, Emine Emel Balci, and again, forgive my pronunciation, from Turkey Until I Lose My Breath, and the director from Vietnam, Kiet Le Van and Gentle. And that will bring us to about 3:30, when we'll have a summary. Then at 3:45, which in Britain is the time that schools finish. So there is a nice symmetry there. And drinks in the foyer, stroke cinema curfew, which sounds a bit drastic, but that will be the time when the debate continues out into the streets of Denmark and energises everybody that you meet. So that's our schedule today. We're going to try to keep it practical, because I'm sure many of you here are filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers, or have made, some of you will have made several films and have plans to make more. So the emphasis is going to be on practicality, and also on, as Jakob has said, inspiration and creativity. Where do you get it? Can you buy it in a shop? Can you buy it as a roll-on deodorant? You know, or is it some magical elixir which is only available to very special people? I have made a film which was rejected by all the best film festivals, which is a 5-minute film about Odessa, which uses location. And I made that film for like literally zero. I just borrowed a friend's camera. We made the film, and as I say, it's now been turned down by everybody. But if I can do a film, if I can get the inspiration to do it, then you know that shows the democratic nature of the filmmaking process, which is, of course, we're getting into subjects like the digital revolution and how films are made. And do you need to go to the state to get money to make films? Do you go to private organisations? I'm from Britain, and like in many areas, we are somewhere halfway between the United States and Europe, because we do have some degree of state funding, but there is also a lot of private money that's going into films, lots of input from television, and also the international aspect of films, because many of the films that we're talking about are co-productions, which rely on people forging international boundaries, which can be a great challenge. And if you watch some films, you have to wait 10 minutes before the credits finish, because there are so many funding bodies telling you all the different places that money has come from. But as I said to Jakob in preparation, that's also a matter of creativity, because to be able to channel your enthusiasm and transmit it to other people and get them to give you money because they believe in your vision, that to me can be as creative as actually writing the script. And as filmmakers know, you will spend as much time chasing up money and trying to get the damn thing made as you will actually sitting down in the room with your typewriter or your word processor actually writing the script. So, enough gabble from me. We need to speak to somebody whose films have been accepted at film festivals, many film festivals, and he's having great success all over the place. One of the reasons that we wanted to have Alex here today was because he did a fascinating discussion with another American filmmaker, Joel Petrikis, for CinemaScope magazine. If you get the chance to look at this online, it's a fascinating debate or a chat about the filmmaking process, creativity. Funding is part of that, and Joel sadly couldn't join us today, but his film Buzzard is in the festival and is an excellent example of how somebody can make a film in their own town where they live for limited money and have great success. Buzzard has won prizes and it's now on release in the United States. So please join me in welcoming our first guest today, Alex Ross Perry.
Thank you.
So welcome.
Nice introduction.
Welcome, Alex. Great to have you here. As I say, I was rereading again your chat with Joel about how the two of you kind of navigate the tricky waters of getting films made. You've made now 4 feature-length films and have others in development. One of the comments that I was particularly inspired by and intrigued by was, I was told at a party upon revealing my budget to some European producer, for this much money you cannot make a film that plays at Locarno. and that was the film Listen Up Philip, I think.
That was the color. That was the color.
That was the colour wheel. But then, of course, you also had Listen Up Philip, which won the what they call it, the Grand Jury Prize at the festival. So, from your perspective, when you speak to producers and they say things like that, I mean, surely in the 21st century, to me, it's very startling that the producer would even think of saying that, especially with terms of a festival like Locarno. So, A, what was the actual budget that you mentioned? And B, how comfortable are you even sort of talking about money terms in that way?
Well, he was a very old producer who was certainly out of touch, deeply, I would say. But you know, that movie, which was my second, is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
That movie, which was my second movie, cost $25,000. It's American dollars, so it'd be a lot of kroners, but you know, you get the idea. And you know, that just seemed to blow this guy's mind. But he was like an old school guy who probably didn't understand that you can do things without official funding channels, I would imagine. But it really seemed to impress him. But perhaps if he, you know, he's probably the kind of guy that goes to festivals and wouldn't see whatever movies are in the section where that budget lives. He's only there seeing the big ones, so he has no idea, as most people don't.
I think we've just, literally this morning, the lineup of the Cannes Film Festival was just announced. I don't know what's in it, but again, it would be, I don't know if any films for $25,000 will be in that section. So he's kind of living in that kind of rarefied bubble. Would it be fair to say?
Yeah, I would imagine so. That these, you know, a lot of the European people that are lucky enough to live in, you know, societies where arts are taken seriously and are supported by the country, don't understand what it would be like to live without that. And then these are countries that, as far as I can tell, very few unsupported films seem to come from. You know, people are afraid of labeling themselves someone who can and will work without support. You know, in America, you do that until you prove to people that you deserve support. Whereas it's my impression that in other countries, if you do that and you make 3-4 movies with your friends, then when you apply for funding, you will not be as good of a candidate because you seem like someone who either has proven that the system doesn't work or that you don't need it. And then you will be penalized, is my impression of why people would not just be making film after film in other countries the way me and my friends do it at home.
So it becomes a kind of a catch-22 or a vicious circle where...
I imagine so, but I have no idea. I mean, I just know that I don't see a lot of European films that seem to cost $30,000. I'm sure they exist. Perhaps they're just not getting played at the festivals that I end up at, or they don't make it to America. But when I ask filmmakers about it in other countries, they say, yeah, it doesn't really happen. You know, no one understands how to do that without the support. You know, which in America didn't make sense to people until like 10 years ago either. The support being like a small Hollywood system of $5 million or up budgets, which is, I guess, roughly equivalent to what a low-budget movie would be anywhere. You know, I was taught in school that that was the basement of filmmaking. And then, you know, a bunch of people have proven that the basement is actually far below that.
I think Joel's film Buzzard was something in the region of $75,000, something like that.
75,000?
Or 7,500, maybe.
I would imagine 7,500 is more accurate. Yeah, I would be shocked if the movie cost almost $100,000. Not because there's anything wrong with it. I think it's a great film, but it's shot in his hometown in his producer's basement. There's no way that it costs that much money.
Hair and makeup, perhaps, for the lead actor.
Everyone in it is a friend of the directors. There's no way the money could be spent that comfortably in that state where they shot it, you know, for just a couple of weeks, I would imagine.
And the state is Michigan, and also you referred to Michigan having tax incentives, which encourage, to some degree, filmmaking to be made. Obviously, in Europe, there are influences which are moving us more to the American model of funding, or even the American model of filmmaking. There's a general election in Denmark coming up, we have one in Britain. And cultural issues are maybe not the top issue of what people decide to vote on. But if you look at the Netherlands, there has been a reduction in arts funding in some areas to zero. And for people who don't understand how it works in America, there is no state support. There is because obviously you have the federal government, which is the whole country, then individual states. And are there any areas where you can get money directly from governmental bodies in that way?
No, you can get money back, but that's only if you hit a certain number of qualifying factors. So my film, Listen Up, Philip, which is playing tonight, was all shot in New York City and state. And there's 5 or 6 things you have to do in order to qualify to get about 20% of your budget returned to you later. Which most states have some sort of a program that does. New York's being right in the middle of it. You know, a lot of American movies are shot in Louisiana or Georgia because they'll give up to 40% back, and it's very easy to qualify for it. Whereas New York, you have to do 5 or 6 separate things, including one day on a sound stage where you build at least a 3-wall set, and a bunch of other little things you just have to do in order to get the money back. And then Michigan, for years, was very generous, and a lot of big movies shot there, a lot of superhero movies and Transformer movies and the new Batman movie shot there. But then they've kind of changed their policies as well. There's a lot of, well, there's a baby here. There's a lot of
future of filmmaking.
California just revamped their tax incentives because essentially California had an annual limit of, let's say, $100 million to give back to film productions, but 20 of it could have been taken up by one $200 million movie. But then they just raised the limit to almost, quadruple, and now it's much easier, but that's the way it works. But then the movie I made last year, Queen of Earth, it was such a small movie that we didn't bother doing any of that, even though it was all shot in New York State.
And you made The Colour Wheel, which is a road movie in which it appears that the characters are driving around. Do they go in different states? So can you get different advantages if they drive through Louisiana and then Michigan?
Again, you have to prove that you're doing a certain amount, and with these small movies, and this is the thing that some people who live in societies where you get money from regions or from different governing bodies, we don't tell anybody we're making the movie, which is what we did with this new one, Queen of Earth. I mean, we could have applied for New York State rebate and done all this, but in order to do that, we have to build a sound stage for one day, and we have to to provide a certain amount of local money, and it's just easier not to bother with that unless there's a lot of money on the line. So declaring your production something that needs money back will probably end up costing you more than you might get back, depending if the movie is $20,000. Because on a $20,000 movie, you can't rent a soundstage for one day and build a set. That's $3,000. Whereas you could just show up anywhere, ask for a favor, and shoot for nothing, which is how 3 of my 4 movies have been made.
And when you say you have to rent a soundstage and build a set, do some people just do that and then just not film there? Do they kind of just tick that box?
You can do that, but every movie does this. There's no reason to not film there. Every movie has like a bathroom scene or a dressing room or something that you could build in a couple of hours that just helps you get that. But you have to photograph the entire process and submit it with your application to receive your rebate. And
you've written the scripts for all of your films, I think, sometimes in collaboration with others. Talking about creativity and inspiration, being aware that these things are required if you want to film in New York or Louisiana, at what point does that enter your process when you're writing the screenplay? Does part of you think, I should have a scene here which I could then make in, to tick that box in some way?
Well, I only learned about most of these things in between my second and third movies. But when I learned about the soundstage thing, the scenes in Listen Up, Philip that are filmed in a soundstage take place in a soundstage, which is sort of cheating. But when I learned that, I thought, that's an easy, I'll put that in there because I would love this movie to qualify, and this will just be one less thing to worry about. So rather than shooting in a soundstage and pretending it's an apartment, in the movie it just is a soundstage. The characters are in a photo shoot in a big empty room with a fake set for the photo shoot in the movie. But I did put that in there thinking this is going to be a great way to get 20% of the budget back, which worked perfectly. but you know, everything else for me just has to come from the exact opposite, which is, you know, what can I get access to for no money, instead of what can I do to save money? What can I do for free? Is how the other movies have all been made.
A filmmaker who's here actually said to me the other day that the key is don't film what you know, film what you own.
Sure, that's great. The person's very smart. They should be up here.
We'll have him up. So in the case of your films, first of all you have Impelex, which was based on a Thomas Pynchon novel.
Just sort of in honor of.
So you didn't have to have complex negotiations with Pynchon's representation or anything like that?
No, I mean, no more than anything that's just, you know, overshadowed by the influence of something. You know, which has happened with a few of my films, where just the importance of source material becomes less of a, you know, actual structure and more of just, you know, the shape that I want the movie to take is kind of inspired by something that already exists. That in all the cases that I'm referring to is novels, not existing movies.
Actually, we do have a clip from Queen of Earth, which I think we're going to show. But before we show that, I read recently you just optioned Don DeLillo's novel, The Names, to be made into a film. So presumably in that case, because you've gone to the bother of formally optioning it, that would be a more adaptation.
That will be very faithful. I don't know if anyone's read that book, but yeah, that will be the book as a movie, similar to the Cosmopolis film.
And in The Names, which I just bought last week in Los Angeles because I saw that you were doing it, it starts in Greece, they go to India, they go to East Asia.
Tunisia.
Yeah, so it's a globe-trotting.
A little bit, yeah. It's not quite worked out how that will happen, but because I'm comfortable making a movie for either the entire shoot or for a couple of days with 5 or 6 people, if you know, that's how this movie will get made, was sort of the pitch to get the rights. Was, you know, it's very non-traditional in its storytelling, as all of his novels are, and any official development process would at some point ruin what makes the book interesting. And my appeal was basically, I'm not going to ruin any of it. No one's going to be giving notes on this. The people who are going to help make this movie, they don't want to make a commercial thriller. They want to make a classy adaptation. So, you know, you'll just make do with it. And if it's not the version of it that would pass muster, if 10 governing bodies had to read the script and say yes, then great.
Because you would have somebody leaning over your shoulder saying, can we make this a bit more Jason Bourne?
Right, well, the example that I sort of, you know, again, this is boring to talk about a book that most people probably haven't read, but, you know, it ostensibly involves a series of murders that are happening, but they don't ever happen in the book. People just kind of talk about them. And somebody would say, how about these happen? How about we see these? How about we see the people committing these crimes? Which, in most cases, is a totally sound idea. But that's clearly not what the point of the book is. So I'm making a movie with people who won't say that, so that the movie doesn't become a ruined version of the book.
And so you're working with the same producers that you worked with before?
I mean, there's really no producers involved yet, except for, you know, a financing partner who optioned the book and wants to make it.
So all the previous films, the Impelex, Queen of Earth, Listen Up Philip, and The Colour Wheel, they were self-produced, or what was the process for that?
My first 2 movies were just friends and family supported. Again, the biggest one of which was $25,000. The smallest one was $15,000. So an amount of money that exists in most places, you know, if it needs to. And then Philip and Queen of Earth were, you know, produced by production partners that exist to make that sort of movie a reality.
I mean, it seems as though you are able to negotiate this world with a certain directness and without kind of falling into the pitfalls that a lot of aspiring filmmakers fall into, because I know a lot of people who spend 10 years trying to get a project off the ground.
Right. Well, I haven't fallen into them yet, but that doesn't mean that I won't. But you know, that's just this incorrect instinct that I think most filmmakers have, which is to top themselves. So my third movie, Listen Up Philip, is a very large movie. You know, 50 crew members, 40 locations, 50 speaking parts. And everyone that you're referring to who fails to make a movie for a while feels like after that you have to make a bigger movie, but then the movie that I made after it, just last year, is much smaller, closer in size, in budget, crew size to my first two movies. And because I felt comfortable doing that, I have another movie. And because I feel comfortable doing that, I will always be able to have something going. Rather than doing what you're describing, which is saying, you know, I made a movie for, you know, in the neighborhood of $1 million. Now I need to make one for 10 million, or 5 million, or 15, you know, that, which is a lot of people say that. I'm saying that. There are things like that I want to do, but if I were only doing that, I would be very inactive right now.
There's the British director Shane Meadows, who has made quite a few films in television and stuff like that, and I think has had several films at this festival. He always says that he has sort of 3 or 4 potential projects which he's developing kind of at the same time, and which one he makes depends on the box office performance of his current film. So if he has a hit, he gets to make his big project. If he has a medium size, he gets to make this one. If he has a flop, well, there's this one. So is that kind of a way, sort of, that mirrors the way that you have different balls in the air all the time?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I've only really had one movie released in the normal way, at home anyway. But, you know, I've never made anybody any money, which prohibits what I'm able to do next. Which is why a small movie is very appealing. Because, you know, the ceiling is very low on that. I've never had something that's a big enough hit that I'm handed the keys to the kingdom to do whatever I want. You know, when that happens, I'm sure it'll be very fun, but it could take years and years for me to be in that position.
And with Queen of Earth, which I think has just been picked up for US distribution by IFC, when we say distribution in the United States for a film like that, because Buzzard, it was shown, I think, in 12 cities kind of simultaneously for like 3 or 4 days, and it played in Grand Rapids, where it's made for 2 weeks. How do you envisage like release of that film? Will people be able to see it in small towns or what? I
have no idea. The distribution system is so broken and ruined at home that I have given up on it as something that I can even justify caring about or paying attention to. And I learned this through the release of Listen Up, Fill Up last year. I mean, a year ago I believed in it, as I had my whole life, and was very excited and involved and opinionated. And 1 year later, couldn't care less. I think it's completely ruined. I think every company has no idea what they're doing. No one is doing a great job. Some people are treading water. And I think that's basically the best American independent film distribution can be called, is, you know, not yet drowning. So I just can't be bothered to care about it anymore, because there's no victory, and you know, it's just all zeros and ones. It doesn't matter if the movie plays in 500 theaters or 5. 90 days later, it's just digital noise on iTunes, on people's computers. So whether it's the whole country or 2 cities for one, it just doesn't matter. It's eventually just going to be one of thousands of things that people ignore when they're browsing for movies online. So getting caught up in that, I think, would take years off my life and would distract me horribly from things that I actually find interesting. I no longer find the release of independent movies remotely worth concentrating on, aside from just, you know, looking at it to see what's happening.
Because like 25 years ago, an American independent film with names of the level of Jonathan Pryce and Elizabeth Moss and Jason Schwartzman, there was a different landscape then. So
5 years ago.
5 years ago. So what has gone wrong? Is it simply that VOD has destroyed the theatrical business?
Well, the theatrical business destroyed itself because of small-minded distributors who just were cheap, and then VOD helped them destroy it. You know, it's like if people were smashing a house with hammers and then someone came in with torches. And they were like, oh, this is faster. This is a much easier way to destroy the house that we have lived in for years. This is great. Now we can have this place razed to the ground in minutes instead of weeks. But yeah, I really don't know. I mean, it's just everyone is so cheap because there's so many movies that need to be released, and they're all probably going to lose money unless you spend a lot of money on them. So you can either spend and hope, or you can not spend and not care. And one of those is just very easy. And one of them takes money and time and effort. You know, like the company that released Listen Up, Fill Up, downsized 2 months after the release and let go of the sole marketing person who worked on the entire campaign, because the amount of effort and energy it took to mount a campaign for a release of a film like that, they just decided they don't want to do it anymore. Right after their second biggest film of all time. And they had enough success that they could have been in a position to step up one notch yet again. But nobody is interested in little baby steps. If they're not hitting it out of the park and doing the best job and getting tons of money, then why do they want to keep trying to have medium successes? They don't, basically, is my understanding. So yeah, it's very broken and really not worth getting upset about anymore. Buzzard, our friend's film, is a great movie, very widely acclaimed, very well reviewed. Like you said, 12 cities, 1 week, and then that's it. But now it's on iTunes forever, just like everything else is. So if people are looking for it, it's there. If people aren't looking for it, they'll never find it. But the director will continue to make other movies that will make people come to his films over and over again. No one will see it now because the distributor spent no money on it, and no one knows that it's on iTunes along with 2,000 other independent films they've never heard of. But in a year, when he has a new movie, people will realize that his last movie is on iTunes, and they will continue to, find it. Like my movie, The Color Wheel, is just now turning a profit on digital spaces, probably because so many people bought or rented it when Listen Up Philip was being written about. We'll start getting that.
And I think Buzzard played in Chicago for the grand total of 2 days.
Yeah.
Both of which Joel introduced, which was very nice to create publicity and awareness. But then at the end of those 2 days, how do you see the film? You've got to go to Grand Rapids.
Yeah. Or just online. Which just doesn't matter. It's just a very flawed, broken system. So I would imagine that the European model of state-supported, funding and infrastructure for arts perhaps has continued to prop up. The movies that get that support have that support for their entire life, which is probably a good thing eventually. I would imagine that once movies get that support, they are not allowed to disappear quite as easily as American movies that are made with no support and then have no support their entire lives, no matter who releases them. A lot of the companies putting money into European films probably have distribution deals in place with theaters or television networks. So the movie is going to get seen because of some aspect of how it was made. Whereas in America, that's just not the case unless a movie is made by a distributor, which basically none are, of course, just Hollywood movies.
I think it's probably a good time just to show a brief clip from Queen of Earth, which involves the credit sequence and the very opening of the film. So, Mr. Projectionist, or Ms. Projectionist, can we please roll the beginning of Queen of Earth by Alex Ross Perry?
This is so easy to do. This is one light, one setup with a single cutaway. We did this 3 times, and it took us 15 minutes. This to me is so much fun, just to find a solution like that. But then the beginning of Listen Up Philip, in the same amount of time, 2 minutes, you have closed off streets, 7 extras being queued, a location that we had to shut down, 3 actors, shots from vehicle, it's just finding different ways to do things based on what resources are available is really fun for me and for my friends who've come up the same way.
In a very intense way of beginning, especially with the face so big, about 3 inches away.
Yeah, most people don't sit this close when they watch movies in the theater with their back to the screen. But for you and me, it looked pretty weird.
I wanted to show the opening titles as well, because in the discussion you talk about logos, and you watch films where all of these fancy logos appear. In this one we have Faliro House, which appears as a logo. Then the rest of it is just the names of all the production companies.
I was noticing that again this morning when I was seeing one of the movies. I was in the lobby because the movie was starting late. Just looking at all the posters hanging up. Yeah, it was the new Roy Andersson movie. 15 logos all along the bottom, and then I looked at the Still Alice poster, which is an American production, and it has 3. So there's just so many companies that support films made not in America And then for us, yeah, we have 2 companies, one of which doesn't even have a logo because they're brand new. So we have 1 logo and then 2 entities that funded the movie, and then the shell company we had to make in order to pay for the movie, which is, not a real production company anymore.
Her Majesty September is that?
I mean, that was the company we had to start in order to have a bank account for this movie. And that bank account will have money that comes in from the movie, but it will never be used for another movie. It'll never be another movie with that production company. That was just this movie's company. So yeah, it's just 2 companies, both of which are basically run by 1 person. And that 1 person said, yeah, we'll give you a little bit of what you need to make this movie. So, but yeah, the logo thing is very interesting to me. I mean, even in the section that I'm watching, which are maybe first and second time films, they all have an astonishing amount of support, beyond what anyone I know could ever get for their first films.
And when you say that Her Majesty September that is a one-off deal, why, if this film makes any money, why not keep that company going and make another film with that company?
It's actually a very boring and complicated reason for that, but basically it's kind of because that company's bank account will continue to bring in the Queen of Earth money perpetually. And it would be fuzzy if other money started appearing in it to finance another film. And also, a lot of times a distribution contract has a clause in it that gives the distribution company releasing a film first option on other films made by the same production company. So if we made another movie that was a Her Majesty September production, we would legally have to show it to our American distributor first, which is stupid because it takes 25 minutes to go open up a business bank account. You can just keep doing it again and again, and you don't have to worry about your money getting crossed for 2 different movies. It's really not interesting, but it's just sort of like a loophole that they kind of insist on in case it becomes a real thing.
And is it also the case that if you make another film and let's say somebody sued you, because apparently in the United States litigation is a thing, and somebody might say, oh, you ripped off my film, if it's all under one umbrella, does that mean they can get the money from the other film as well?
I have no idea. I mean, that's what insurance is for. That's what's called E&O insurance, which is errors and omissions, which there's really nothing we could talk about that's further from the creative process than talking about E&O insurance. But basically it's in place to prevent that sort of thing from happening, and you have to submit your script at a certain time and prove that, this is when the movie was conceived. And, mostly it's just a great way to politely decline when someone asks if I will read their script or look at their movie, to say, 10 years from now, if there's something in something I do that's vaguely similar, then you can say, hey, I showed him my script, then he stole it. So, legally you have a reason to say, I can't look at stuff like that because this is America and you'll come after me.
And as you say, nothing further from the creative process, but obviously on a very small film, the makers of that film will have to go through these tedious kind of legal and bureaucratic manoeuvres. Or is it the case that once you've become established, you then can get somebody to just take care of all that, so you can just say, I'm now the creative person, I'm going to labour on the scripts and get everything right?
Well, my first two movies do not legally exist in any actual way. They're playing at festivals, they have distribution. One of them is on iTunes and Amazon in America, been released in various countries. There's not a single piece of paperwork for it that predates the release paperwork. I never got anybody to sign a locations agreement, a release form for any of the actors. We didn't have insurance because we owned whatever equipment we were using, so we didn't have to rent anything. It's completely undocumented, and that's the result of me being the only person in charge. And people say you can't make a movie without that, but it's like, of course you can. You just can't legally prove that it exists if you ever need to, but because it's never going to turn a profit. Like I said, $25,000. It doesn't matter how well it sells for the next 50 years. It's never going to make $25,000 at this point. Not to mention the fact that the company who released it in America spent money. So first they have to make their money back, and then I would start seeing about that $25,000. So it'll never happen. So it just doesn't matter. But then on Listen Up Philip, there's half a dozen people filling out paperwork all the time, and having the SAG actors sign paperwork, and it's very clearly legally documented. And again, you need to submit all that in order to get your state rebate. But then on this movie, Queen of Earth, I mostly was doing all that myself with one other producing partner. And, I still don't really know how to do that paperwork, but he does, so he was very useful. He likes doing it. It's kind of fun for him to make charts and keep everything organized. But, the only thing that happens when you have other people doing it is you just don't know what's happening. You never know what's going on. You never know who's up to speed or what the problems are. And some people think that keeping those away from someone making a movie helps them concentrate, but for me it makes me really anxious to see people kind of huddling about a problem and not know what it is. So then on this movie I was very much, involved in making sure that I knew everything that was happening and that I was generally the only person able to solve most problems. Like our other producer who did a lot of the paperwork and the insurance never talked to any of the actors, agents, or lawyers. I did all of that and handled all of their contracts myself, just so that I know what the negotiation looks like, rather than having one meeting a week where someone brings me up to speed on it.
Is it what we call being a control freak?
It's not that, it's just, because I like having other people to do that, but I only like having other people do the stuff that I don't like doing. I mean, I don't mind negotiating with someone's lawyer, which negotiating means trading one email a week with them and maybe one phone call. It's not like a heated across the table thing. So it's, it's just fun. And it's interesting to learn about how things get made. And now, I see every movie I see now, I see differently. So it's not controlling. It's just wanting information about what it takes to make movies the way that I intend to keep making them. What it takes to get an actor on set, what you have to promise them, what you don't have to promise them, what doesn't matter at all. It's just all interesting to me. So it's not control so much as it is just information that I find fascinating.
And working with somebody like Jonathan Pryce, who's obviously gone from being a Bond villain to great success on the West End stage and all that kind of thing, to get somebody like Jonathan Pryce into a film of not Bond level budgets.
Jonathan Pryce is in Listen Up, Philip, not Queen of Earth.
That would be an interesting film if he did pop up at some point in that one.
He would. If he were in New York, he would have been in there, I guarantee.
Is that because you're like pals with Jonathan Pryce, or you have a friend of a friend, or how do you actually go about getting a name to be in a film like that?
I mean, that's all just normal. Again, I have no idea how this works in Europe. I imagine it's perhaps slightly similar and also entirely different how the process is of getting recognizable talent in films, because first films are supported and financed in a way that ours in America are not. So, my third film was the first one I ever made with known actors. And it was just, the producers had a relationship with a Hollywood agency who really supported the script and started throwing a lot of their clients at it. And he was one of them. And, I never met him. I didn't meet him until the day before he started filming. We had Skyped about the movie. And, he's a respected, accomplished actor in his 60s. The last thing he needs to do is come to a movie for $250 a day where he doesn't have a dressing room of his own or anywhere to go that is private, where he just basically has a chair off to the side of wherever we're filming at all times and someone to ask him if they can get him anything. The last thing he needs to do is that. He can do a voiceover for a commercial for one day and, make way more money, but some actors really like acting. And some actors really like making money and being comfortable. And the ones that really like making money you never see in American independent movies. Their independent movies are the ones you were talking about earlier. They're in the $20 million range. Like a $20 million movie like Silver Linings Playbook has actors you would never see in $1 million movie. And so on. But, a guy like him, he'll come do it because he likes acting and he likes creating characters and he'll have fun and then he's proud of the work and he'll go to festivals and do photo calls and Q&As and really enjoy himself. So it just depends on what the kind of actors are. So Elizabeth Moss is in both Listen Up, Philip and Queen of Earth. She doesn't mind taking a few weeks where she's basically losing money every day that she's making this movie instead of taking a real job in order to personally be involved with creating a small, fun project that is something you can be proud of. So some actors are really into it, and there's enough of them that I can continue finding people like that who want to make small movies, and then the movies are hopefully going to be good enough that everyone will be proud. But you have no idea. I mean, now I have 2 movies with known actors that people can look at and say, this guy's not going to make a mess of it. But getting Jonathan and all the other actors and Listen Up Philip could have been a disaster. I mean, there was no indication that that movie wasn't going to go terribly, because I'd never done anything like it before, and it was my biggest movie times 50. So that was a real vote of confidence from all those actors, which is why I felt confident making such a large movie.
And Elizabeth Moss, obviously many people have seen her in Mad Men and other projects. But if she's making a film like yours, if she gets the phone call from somebody at Mad Men, in theory she would have to go off and do that, would she?
In theory, yes. I mean, that's sort of the negotiation thing, is blocking out actors' dates, which is why anytime you can see a movie with a bunch of actors in it, it's a miracle that they were somehow able to set aside the same amount of time. But, you know, yeah, I mean, there's an order of priority, which is the sort of thing that's not, I just enjoy learning where jobs come from and what takes, you know, not even that they want to do it, but just that you have to do it. It's not that they're choosing to turn their back on smaller things, it's just business is business, and if something runs long, then it runs long, and there's nothing you can do, and you'll lose an actor because of whatever job has them in what's called first position, which is just whatever has dibs on them. You know, which is just interesting to see what has first position on actors. When there's usually something, some big movie that, you know, could change their dates, and then you lose your actor because they're not going to lose this amazing opportunity in a huge film to come make $100 a day.
So it's interesting when you see people like Charlotte Gainsbourg, who's going to be in Independence Day 2. So this may impact on the schedules of Lars von Trier and other
perhaps, but you know, for people like that, it's probably just kind of fun to go do something like that for a couple of weeks. You know, because how often do you get asked to be a part of something crazy like that? But you know, Jonathan is in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and he plays the President of the United States in the G.I. Joe movies. And he was talking about his G.I. Joe experience when we were making Listen Up Philip, and you know, it's just like, there's something interesting about it to actors, but, you know, and he has all the stuff that we can't give him. He has a dressing room and perhaps even his own assistant and someone to drive him everywhere. But he's, you know, way down the list of things people care about on set. There's huge egos on that set that need tending to before him. Whereas on our set, he can just sit there and tell everyone stories about all the amazing things he's done, and that's the greatest part of everyone's day. And that's just more interesting. So, you know, everything has its, you know, appeals to actors, I would imagine, about going to do something like that, or Charlotte Gainsbourg doing Independence Day, or Juliette Binoche in Godzilla, you know. And
did you ever just sit all day listening to Jonathan Pryce tell stories and think, oh damn, we've got to make a film now?
I mean, well, at any time. It was really at the festivals that we got to just sit and listen to him at Sundance and Locarno, when we had nothing to do except for just kind of do press. That, yeah, I mean, just get him going. Hours can pass telling amazing stories from all sorts of things that he's been involved with, and then you realize you're hearing stories about people you don't know. I don't know who any of the people are, but the story is still interesting somehow.
And isn't he playing some kind of messianic revolutionary in Game of Thrones now? Is that what he's doing?
I believe he's playing a religious figure on Game of Thrones, which I haven't seen him in yet, but he was in the middle of shooting that at our European premiere at Locarno. So that's the sort of thing that would have had him in first position. And if they had changed their dates, he would have had to have canceled coming to the festival to support the film, because that's just a huge thing where he doesn't control the schedule. If they say, yo, you're off Tuesday and Wednesday, you can go to Switzerland, then all of a sudden they say, we need you Tuesday, there's nothing he can do, because he's not the one that sets the schedule on a show like that.
And we've got to sadly come to the end. You're my Jonathan Pryce today. We could be sitting all afternoon.
Oh no, there's plenty of other people that
yeah,
everyone else wants to listen to.
But maybe just to wrap it up, you visit many European festivals, and you come to and see the European system of work. From an American filmmaker's perspective, do you feel kind of like, oh, if only I was making films in Denmark?
I mean, I always feel that way, and 2 of the movies, including the Don DeLillo one that I'm hoping to make, are going to be European movies. I'm very curious about seeing the way that sort of a film production gets structured, but I don't think either one will be made in the official way. I think we'll make them the way we've made our movies, which is very small and sort of undeclared, but just make them over here. But they might end up being the sort of thing where without having to do any work, the support is offered. You know, you mentioned that the Lilo book takes place partially in India. We could just get a phone call from some Indian film commission saying, we'll give you $250,000 to shoot in our part of India, and we don't have to do anything, we don't have to show them the script, and then that's free money basically. So if it's that easy, then yeah, that'd be great. If I have to do any work in order to make it happen, then I'm not interested, because I already know what I'm doing enough to make the movie. If there's any way that it can be made easier without really learning something that I'd never learned before, that would be ideal, but you know, I think that's the best I can hope for.
And maybe when Woody Allen stops making films, you could be in that position of getting offered to make, you know...
Just taking people's money to film in there. Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. I'd be happy to do that, and hopefully, you know, one or both of these European movies can be made that way. But, you know, like you pointed out, and like I said, I have a Greek company that is very interested in the movies I've been making, and, you know, I could think of a lot of movies to make in Greece before I run out of ideas. I don't need to travel all over, but, you know, after my screening tonight, someone could come up to me and say, you make a movie here, we'll put, then that's a done deal. As far as I'm concerned, that's all I need. I don't need very much to make a movie. I mean, Queen of Earth was made with a crew of about 8 people in just 2 weeks. So if you can do that, you can do pretty much anything.
And as Alex points out, the film is playing. Tonight, 9:30, we have... well, Queen of Earth is on Friday at 10:30 in the Empire, and on Saturday at 2:15. Listen Up Philip is tonight at 9:30 in the Dagmar, and on Saturday at 7 o'clock in the Grand. And Impolex, a rare chance to see Impolex, that is showing tomorrow at 9:45 here in the Cinematheque. So nobody has any excuse not to be completely immersed in the world of Alex Ross Perry.
Sure, except for me, because I'm leaving tomorrow, but I will only be at tonight's screening, but, you know, I hope they all go well in my absence. Yeah. Nothing can be added to the movies by me talking about them afterwards. It's just fun for me to be here, so that's all I care about.
Well, it's been great having you, and
thank you.
Good luck with the films, and
Thanks.
we look forward to seeing you next. Thank you. So we now move on to a more Danish focus of this afternoon's event, the film Shelley, which is a work in progress, and we're very pleased to be able to show you a brief clip of the film, which I'm going to show you now before we introduce the makers of the film. So please welcome from the film Shelley, the writer, the director and scriptwriter Ali Abbasi, and the producer Jakob Jarek. So welcome to you both. A highly intriguing clip. The whisper of horror that ran through the audience when the knitting needle was taken off. Maybe you could just bring...
Perfect reaction.
Yeah, but what happens to the knitting needle? Does she plunge it into somebody?
That's like money shot of the movie. That's what selling tickets.
Well, the imagination will run riot. So maybe if you could just speak briefly about what the film's about, and put that clip into a bit of context, please.
It's like a psychological horror movie about a Danish couple living in the countryside without electricity, without cultivating their own food, because the blonde woman is allergic to electricity. When you get into the film, she's in deep depression because she was a child and she can't have any. So her husband hires this Romanian maid to help her out. And quickly they become friends, and they enter this pact that for 50,000 euros she's to carry her child. But then the birth, or what's called this svangerskab,
pregnancy.
The pregnancy starts to take shape, and weird stuff dangerous stuff starts to happen.
Is that an accurate synopsis? This is the script writer. You're the script writer, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote the script with my fellow scriptwriter, Martin Luis, again, who's not here. Just had a baby.
And Alex was talking about funding mechanisms and how that impacts on the kind of creative process. So when you were writing the screenplay, were you writing it kind of like just as an exercise in free exercise in creativity, or does part of your mind think this has to be paid for? I have to get money to do this. How does it work?
Well, okay. Gonna tell you guys a little bit about the background for because you know the tricky thing about film is it's not really. I mean, everybody wants it to be art, but it's not really like just art. So like most of the decisions people make as filmmakers, producers, it's not like solely based on like artistic, and it's not solely based on economics either. So just to say that I was trying, I went to the film school in Denmark in same class, and I was trying to get things made, and it didn't go that well, and I tried a couple of times, and I got developed some projects, blah blah blah, and then I kind of settled for the idea of, okay, I'm not gonna go for what I want to do, but I'm gonna go for what I would think is possible to do. And then I kind of like, going through my projects in the catalog, and I was like, okay, this one would probably be a good candidate for where I am right now and what I would expect from the commissioners to like, what kind of feedback I would get. And from there it started happening. And I also have to say that when we got the funding, I was so pissed off and tired of the system, which is my own fault. I just bought a camera and I was going back to Iran, where I come from originally. I was going to like make a movie and don't come back until I make a movie, and then suddenly we got the funding. So this is the background of like where the movie was. That being said, yeah, I was thinking about it as okay, this is gonna be something in a budget range of such and such, but not in exact figures, but it's more like in the budget range of this type of crew and this type of production and actors and that. And then actually it turned out that we got way more on almost every front. So also with the actors I was looking for and the actors we got, and it's like the locations and everything. So yeah, that was it.
One of the recurring subjects that I think we're going to be talking about this afternoon is the casting process. And on some films, a professional casting director is employed. In other films, it's a matter of the production does it themselves. Obviously, in a film like this, which is an intense psychological film, as we see, the casting is crucial. What was your role in the casting process, and did you employ a professional casting director to find the actors?
I think at some point in development, I did this I did some like pictures of what I would expect each character to look like, and present them for our commissioner, and then I thought, okay, I might as well find some people that I really believe in, just instead of like taking George Clooney and put his face on instead of the actor. I would like find the guy I was looking for, or the actor I would think would play. And for the main characters, I think like the three main characters, I think two of them ended up being those who I thought they would be. Cosmina Stratan, who plays the Romanian girl, and Peter Christopherson, who's the guy who's like the third main character. And but then it was also like I think with Ellen it was I saw Blind, the Norwegian movie Blind, where she's also playing like one of the major roles, and I was talking to some Danish actors as well, but then like I think we thought she would be perfect for the role, and then we started. So those three main characters, I think there was no like casting directors involved. Then we have a few minor like B characters, and there we used our casting director.
And you mentioned Cosmina Stratton, who is she won Best Actress in Cannes for Beyond the Hills, and this is your first film, first feature film.
Yes.
So to get, it's a bit like getting Jonathan Pryce for Listener Philip, to get an internationally esteemed actor of that level, how do you actually go about that? Do you just contact the agent and say we want you?
Well, yeah, I think Jakob did the hard part. My job is more like window shopping. I was like, I want that, I want that, I want that, and somebody has to make it happen. But I think it's like mostly it comes down to the script, which I think is pretty annoying actually, because I don't like to judge projects based on scripts. I don't want the project to be judged, my project at least, on a script. But it's like the only concrete thing people have to go after, and like mostly when you talk to actors and say, okay, do you want to be in a movie or not? And say like, send me the script. And if the script they think is crappy, or if the script is good, that's really like a major thing. Yeah, that's at least the way it works in Europe, I think.
I mean, we had a very good script, actually. So it gave a lot of like when people read it, they were really interested. So it was very basic. I just contacted agents, met with one of them in Cannes, and another one over the phone, and they passed it along. I talked to them about the project, what I'd done before, who Ellie was, and kind of try to build the trust. So, and then it was a low budget movie from the begin with, so I said that out straight out, and then they read it, and I think they were really. I mean, it's a dream, I think, for actors like Alex Ross-Perry just said, for movies that are this size. The actors are in focus. There isn't a lot of technical stuff, CGI. I mean, it's a really, like, I think they value being actors. So it's even we shot it in 3 weeks, a bit more than 3 weeks. So you don't have to take that much time out, and you can be in the centrum of things. Yeah. So I think they like that.
And as Ali says, there was various projects which could have been made, and this was one of the ones which he thought would appeal to the people making the decisions. It's interesting for me that this is a genre film, which, as you say, is kind of in the psychological horror, can we call it, or suspense genre. And obviously, if more films are being made on a smaller amount of money, which is, I think, what's going to happen in terms of Danish funding, that will, I presume, mean that more genre films will be made, because generally the lower budget films that are successful are quite often in the horror genres or in genres like that. From a producer's perspective, dealing with genre, is that something that you think is going to be more of a thing? Because I don't associate Danish cinema so much with psychological horror films yet, but I will do.
I think maybe, probably, but I don't think it's to do with budget. I think, you're not producing a production, you're producing a film, and you have to respond to that film and believe in the talent and believe in the content. So when Ali we had different projects in development that didn't work out, and then we couldn't get the financing, and then when he presented to me with this project, I was intrigued on I didn't think about, obviously maybe you think a bit about the financial, but I like the idea, and I think it's really important to remember when you're even doing low budget or micro budget or no budget or whatever scale you're in, you have to make a good movie, or believe in it and respond to that material. Some genres, the cheapest stuff is to do drama. So you would think that low budget stimulates doing regular drama, because genre stuff needs to be a bit more precise, it needs to have some effects, sometimes stunts. You need other elements, you need to build. You can't use necessarily reality as it is, you have to kind of guide the audience to believe that there's something else. So I don't know if that's
And now certainly in Britain, when I meet low budget filmmakers, and I was just in Michigan in the US, and I was speaking to a lot of them who do make low budget horror movies,
Yeah.
and also the special effects. Maybe it's just some tomato ketchup being squeezed, and then they're bleeding to death. So I think the genre audience is quite forgiving of. It doesn't have to look like. The Furious 7 or Michael Bay or something like that. They're kind of the cheapness is part of the fun if you're making a low budget horror film. But when you're talking with commissioners, to what degree is it a dialogue? Do they say to you, we quite like this, but you need to do that, and then that must be difficult from a creative perspective, is it?
Well, it's like talking to commissioners. Like, let's say, I'm this like psychiatric hospital, and I'm the mental patient, and I'm at your place. You're the doctor. You want to evaluate if I'm sane enough to be like get free. So you would ask me like, okay, so how do you feel? And feel free to say exactly how you feel. I mean, no censorship. Just like just tell it the way you want it. But then I know that if I say I'm kind of fucked up and I'm angry, I'm frustrated and all sorts of stuff, maybe I'm not crazy, but I have all sorts of other stuff, then it would probably affect me, like my chance of coming out negatively. So I would try to say like, okay, like how would you want me to say that? Then I would try to say that in that way. And I mean, this is not to like put a negative spin on like the commissioning things. It's like, commissioner is a person, he or she got a job, I got a job too, we got to meet, this has to happen in one way or the other, But there is a situation there where, you have commissioner, which commissions stuff, and then you have, it's like the commissioner in Danish is called, or in Swedish as well, called consultant, actually, konsulent, which somebody who's supposed to consult. And in the Danish or Swedish, I think, Scandinavian system, these two roles are the same. Which means that you consult me, but also you commission. Which becomes this like a schizophrenic situation sometimes, because like I want to consult with you, but I also know that you're the one giving me money. So this is like this is one aspect of it. But that being said, it's like everything else in this business. I think it's very like depends on personal chemistry you got with whoever the commissioner is and the other people. And I don't think they're like most of the commissioners I have to do with they're competent people. They know what they're doing. They have different tastes on stuff. But it's just I think it's more about the way system is built than about like the individuals.
And do you think it would be healthier if you had a consultant and a commissioner as two separate people? So you get the money and then you deal with another person, or do you think the current system is a better way of doing it?
Well, the optimal way would be if you could, drop the whole commissioning thing somehow, and just have consultant and have like the money part is something else. You have some kind of like you have to earn some credits or merits or whatever. You go to school, you get something. But I know also that when I say this, I don't have any like suggestions how that system would work. I think that's why I've been talking to KMI, which was I think most of the people know who he was. He was like chief artistic director for New Danish Screen, and we were talking a lot about this low budget scheme that it has to happen. And now I'm really glad that it happened, because I think, as you said yourself, it's like when you're bidding for 5 million euros, then it's a lot of hair scratching. But when the amount comes down, the risk comes down, and then like the lower the amount is, the fewer discussions you have about money. That gives itself. The lower amount is, the less strings are attached. So in that way, I think maybe the problem would kind of solve itself when you like say, okay, I'm gonna give you the money. You're gonna go do the crappy movie you want to do, because I know you're gonna do a crappy movie, but you know, maybe after 4, then you come up with something instead of saying, okay, let's go together in this room and try to make a masterpiece. You know, that's put some other pressure on.
And from your perspective, Jakob, do you share Ali's enthusiasm for this new development?
I think what Ali's saying here, I don't know about all that, but what I think is interesting is the low budget possibilities that are happening now. So I think the good thing is that you have less pressure, you have a quicker way to getting to funding, and that can develop talent in other ways, because there has been, at least in Denmark, maybe other places in Scandinavia, that you had to go a certain way to get a certain level. Yeah, like people haven't believed that you can make cheaper films, so you had to go on a certain level of budget, and that's totally opening up now. Also, with being like, this film is made inside of the system, so it's still kind of safe film. But there's other films like Elite and stuff that's made totally like on like an American way, you know, where you have your friends and you have energy and you have a time period and you have $20,000 or 200,000 kroners or whatever. So I think it's very good because it opens up the range of potential films, what talent can develop into that, and that's really exciting.
And then, of course, to get sort of recognisable actors, they have to be willing to play ball, and they're not going to say, sorry, my fee is 10 million, there we are.
No, I think there are a lot of actors out there, so, you know, you have to just say what you have, and, you know, if you have, at least in Denmark, you know, it doesn't, if you pay them 100 kroner a day or 700 kroner a day, it doesn't really matter, you know, it's like what we did on this movie, we did the same for everyone. So actually the cast and crew co-owns big parts of the movie. So it's kind of like a communist cooperative,
like a collective
kind of thing. So that was our system, and then we just said, then it's easy to negotiate, because you don't have to negotiate, because that's how it is. And you have to kind of find ways of just saying, it's not realistic to go for Mats Mikkelsen, which is the biggest Danish star, if you want to do a 200,000 kroner movie. I mean, you could try for 2 years, but so it's about, yeah.
And what is the actual position with the film at the moment? How far is it off being finished, and when will it be?
We're still editing, so it's funded through this New Danish Screen, which is like, it's a talent scheme at the Danish Film Institute, so we don't have any release date, because that can only happen once we've locked edit, and yeah.
Perhaps you have in your mind a festival, or you have a vague idea that what is your dream that you would premiere at Venice?
Yeah, I think Venice, Toronto, Midnight Madness, or something like that would be really good. But we still have to finish the editing.
And in terms of kind of, I know post-production can be also an expensive thing, and often people need funds for kind of colour correction and stuff like this. Is this something that you've, you know, do you get to the end of the budget and think, oh hell, we've got to do some extra sound stuff here?
I think with this, when it's financed the way it is, you have to kind of provide, you know, it has to, the budget you're going to provide, you have to guarantee that it's going to be a finished movie. When you do no budget, then it's, I mean, a lot of the post-production stuff you can get, if you're flexible enough, everyone knows that, you can edit or color grade in the weekends, or you can do, so it's a different situation.
A filmmaker yesterday said that reshoots are impossible on a lower budget project. Was that something that you were aware of, thinking, hell, you know, we've got to get it right on the first or second go?
I think, I don't know, so far I came up with like 5 different reshoots ideas. Like every week I come with a new like key scene that we're missing. But I don't know, I mean, it's just, this is like a...
It's not on, I mean, it's the energy, you have to go with energy in that certain amount of time, and then just, I mean, yeah, reshoots is, I don't think, actually it's really a normal thing outside of the Hollywood system. I mean, you just have to even more believe in the energy, and you have the time slot to do the movie, and then it'll be what it'll be, you know.
And also, you know, it's also about how long you want to drag the fucking project, you know? If you wanna, like, okay, I can edit in 2 more years and hope that something, you know, like the gold is at the end of the tunnel, yeah, sure, but sometimes I think you have to accept that we didn't shoot that scene, you know? And no matter how many times the editor is like, you know, banging her head against the wall, we didn't have that scene. So, you know, let's make a movie without that scene. Because, you know, I also tried, you know, before I made film like professionally, I did it like on my own one-man army thing. And then you have this thing that, okay, well, I need this, and I need this, and I need this, and you never finish, you know? And I think this is actually one thing I really like about this whole low-budget scheme, that you have, I mean, if you could use it that way, that you have this like bracket of what money can buy you in time and energy and services, and then you use it on to make a movie, and then you're done, and that's it. Bye for now. Next one.
I think both, or you, as a filmmaker, you know, you have the crew that's on for 2-3 weeks, but as a filmmaker, you're with the movie in pre-production, post-production. So you still have a life, and if you're not making a lot of money on these movies, you need to get money from somewhere else. I mean, you have to constrain yourself in order to survive financially. So you can't like be editing for 2 years or reshoot for 3. I mean, you need to kind of finish it off because you need to move on and be productive. And yeah, that's healthy.
And when it is finished, will you go to Iran and just make a film as a one-man army?
Well, I don't know. Now I'm suddenly in like this strange new position where I get money. Whereas, like, I had this Swedish project which I'm doing based on like a kind of famous Swedish author. And I think I've been working on this project maybe 3 weeks, and we already got like 1 million kronas in different like sort of fundings. And I remember the time, which was not that long time ago, where I came and I have to like really negotiate to get like, you know, 20,000 kronas to write, and I had to write 5 treatments before I write the script. So I don't know. It's I still have the camera and I still have the idea, but the reality is, you know, as Axel was saying, that, you know, it's like when whoever comes to you with a certain amount of money, say, okay, you want to make a movie, you would be crazy to say no, because, you know,
they might not ask you ever again.
well, you know, it goes really, you know, so this is for, if there is a business, I'm sure maybe it's the same with music or everything. I mean, you have like this moment where there's a hype, like my moment is like before the movie comes out and everybody knows how crappy it is, so it's like, now it's like it's a hype and you have to like clinch 4 projects in Norway and 3 in Poland, and, you know, and you have to use
then the film comes out and it's too late because you've already signed. They've already signed you the money. Well, we could again talk for much longer, but time is against us. So Shelley is going to be coming at some point. So you've seen an exclusive teaser for it, and I'm sure I'm very keen to know what happens to the knitting needle. And maybe she pierces her ear with it. That would be a nice development.
She wants to knit.
She wants to knit, so it's, you know, low budget knitting. So please join me in thanking our great guests today, Ali and Jakob. So yeah, earlier on we heard from Alex Ross Perry talking about his American approach to making films, which is becoming more European or international. And we've also just heard from the makers of Shelley, the forthcoming Danish thriller. And this afternoon session we have some more clips for you from some of the films showing in the festival, and we'll be speaking to the makers of those films. The first section this afternoon involves 3 films which make particularly stimulating use of locations, which in terms of whatever budget film that you make, locations are crucial. And the films that we've selected for the festival and which we've selected for this event make particularly creative use of limited locations. In fact, some of the films are all about the fact that the characters cannot escape their locations, as you'll see. What we'll do is we'll run the 3 clips one after the other. The first one is from the Danish film The Elite by Thomas Denskov. Then we have Limbo by Anna-Sophia Hartmann. And then finally Petting Zoo by Micah McGee. So if we could please roll those clips and then we can speak to the makers. Thank you. So please welcome the makers of the films. We have Thomas Denskov, Anna-Sophia Hartmann and Micah McGee. We tried to get clips with water in all 3 films, but and is there a clip with water that we missed from your film, Anna-Sophia?
I have the harbour, but it's not underwater.
Yeah, the characters don't actually dive in the water and become submerged because
It's winter.
It's winter time in Knoxcoff and people don't jump in. Yeah, so maybe we can we'll speak to obviously everybody on the panel. We also have in the audience joining us the director of The Fire, Juan Schnittmann, and director of The Tree, Sonia Prosents. Whose films are also tie into this theme of location. And Sonia's film was the one that I was referring to when I said that the characters are trapped in their environment, because it's about characters in Albania who are unable to leave the house for very complicated reasons. So yeah, but we'll feel free to chip in. But maybe if I start with you, Thomas, because I know that the way that you made the film has been described to me as extremely unorthodox and very different in terms of how Danish films are normally made. Were you consciously aware that you were breaking rules and being unorthodox, or what is it that's so unorthodox about the film?
I think the way that we learned to do films was from short films and filmværkstedet, and we did 30 minutes of film in 6 days a few years ago. And I think, being stupid, I just thought that I just have to do that 3 times in a row, and that's a feature film. And we applied that to, I think, the budget and way of thinking the story, and also on that first film I did. It was shot at this one location in a summer house, and we wanted to do the same with this one, because you save so much time and energy from not moving around all the time and not have to reset or start all over again every morning, and you don't have to pack stuff down. You can just grab the camera and start shooting. And we had a scene where the actors are waking up in the morning, and they lived at the house. So we're just going to wake you guys up with the camera tomorrow morning. We're just going to start shooting, and when we wake up, and we're going to go get some breakfast, and there was also the, all of the meetings, and there really weren't any meetings over there. There were just lunch or dinner, and then we just spoke about the film, because that was what we were doing. And the actors slept in the house and got into their characters really well by that. And then we slept at a what do you call it? A football club, I think, down the road, and we just went over there every morning and then left them again.
And so the house that we see in the film, which is like a kind of a castle type, it's not some little chalet. I mean, is that your family's actual house?
No, not at all. I think one location, it would be boring if Carl had inherited like a 1-bedroom apartment. That would be a pretty boring film and not that interesting visually. So of course he inherits this amazing house with a lake and a speedboat and towers and what have you. And also I think the interior is so strange, like this 80s Russian Scarface-ish, and also just dusty and old, really messed up place.
So how did you actually get that house? Did you know the owner of it?
It was a miracle, I think. We saw some other houses, white walls, boring as hell, and then we found this, and the guy who had it, he was like a what do you call that? A car sale. He sold old cars, and he had died 5 years ago. He had 3 daughters who had inherited the house, called Mercedes, Lotus, and Carrera. And there was also his 3 cars parked outside the nightclub. Yeah. So these 3 girls, they inherited some money, and
didn't we make a play about
It's called King Lear. It's Shakespeare.
yeah. So they spent the money. They immediately shaved their eyebrows off and got some new ones tattooed on. And then they had implants, breast implants, and then they all worked at McDonald's.
This sounds like the film that you should make, rather than.
Yeah, totally. I was so sad coming out and started meeting them, and I was like, oh, that's more interesting.
And in terms of the creative process, you've got this terrific location. Was it always in your mind that obviously you wanted to make a film in a particular location, but to what extent did that, when you found that house, did that actually change the nature of the creative process?
It changed almost everything. When we found the lake, obviously we hadn't written a scene where people are driving a speedboat or in a lake or swimming, but when we found that, of course, we put it in the script. And I think we had the location 2 months before, so we could really rewrite a lot of the scenes to fit the house.
We can then maybe turn to our guests on the left. First of all, we had the second clip we showed was from Limbo, Anna Sophia, and the clip that we showed is a clip I like this scene because you think it's just going to be the main characters talking in the restaurant, then you actually see that the food has been made by somebody, which is really a kind of the microcosm of the film, because the film is in Nakskov, which is where sugar comes from, which we put in our tea. Maybe you could speak a little bit about why you chose Nakskov to make this film, and again the similar question that I asked Thomas. When you got to that location, how did that impact what you actually then did?
Well, I chose to shoot in Nakskov because that's where I grew up, and I had been away for a very long time, and I had this idea of the film came from like a project that I did photographs of kids in their rooms, in their being on that sort of in between in these kids' room with like teddy bears all over, but you had these like very adult sort of kids, and I was very interested. I thought Nakskov was very attractive from sort of a maybe even like anthropological kind of view, that the economical, like what it reflected on sort of world economy or what's going on economically. And then obviously I grew up there, so I knew all these spaces, and I knew the pizzeria, I knew the school the school in the film where all these teenagers go to school. I went to school there, and I had all these spaces that I already knew, but I didn't want to make my story, so I interviewed and found all these kids and trying to figure out how I could have them in there. And I don't know, I think because there's always, I was thinking a lot about what is film, what is narration, and I just wasn't very interested in having one film with one character and sort of Jardinish just falling on the neck of them all the time, and just that there's so much more that is affecting us and that is around us, and obviously now they weren't in my script, they were supposed to be Bosnians, because that's when I grew up. In the 90s, there's this whole wave of immigrants from ex-Yugoslavia. Now they're Turkish, but and they're part of that city, and they're not visible. And I wanted to make them visible, like the factory or other kid, like just sort of that the film allows itself to look away from the main character, basically.
We have spoken to some degree about budget and money, but also I think time is something which we also touched upon, which is more of an intangible thing. And from the way that you're talking about the reason why you chose to film there, it kind of saves you the time because you know this stuff already. But if I said to you, you've got to go and make a film in Vladivostok, you'd have to then spend weeks or months or years to get the level of knowledge. So as a filmmaker, how do you budget time if you're not budgeting money?
That's a very good, very good question, because I do not know. I mean, it's very tempting. I would love to go to Rio to make a film, because Rio, I think, is obviously be a nice place to stay for half a year. But I have no clue about Rio. I mean, and I don't. I mean, it is something I'm thinking about. Like, how can I go to somewhere else to make a film? Am I entitled? Am I? How can I talk about something I don't know anything about? And of course, you can go some places and you can learn about it. But I haven't come to that level of comfort with other places yet somehow. I mean, and at the same time, it's a very fictional place also, because it's not, or these spaces that I know very well, they sort of have room for fiction to happen.
And could there be a possibility that you will continue making films in Nakskov? One thinks of William Faulkner, who spent his whole life in a particular area of the American South. And could there be, in theory, you could make 10 films about different parts of Nakskov?
Well, Nakskov is very small, but I actually, but I am planning my next film in Rødby, which is even smaller, and sort of 30 kilometers away from Lolland, just because I don't know. Yeah, I feel very. I mean, it might happen at some point that I will feel very attracted to Brandenburg. I don't know, but because I'm living in Berlin. But right now, I'm very attracted to Lolland, and this. I haven't sort of exhausted the possibilities there yet.
Alex was saying about directors, the pitfall of having to top yourself. But if you are making films about progressively smaller places, then the films get bigger and the places get smaller. You end up making a film about a bus stop or something.
There are lots of bus stops that are, they're not being used anymore. So maybe I should.
A cheap location can be used. And moving to Micah, because there are obviously obvious parallels here, because this film is made in San Antonio, which is where you're from, and as Anna Sophia was saying, it's her school to some degree. It's her zone, and you're also living in Berlin, I think I read.
Yeah, we actually go to the same school. Or this was my thesis project from the same school that Anna's going to now.
And so again, the concept of saving time and being able to just go there and immediately kind of know, or do you have to reacquaint yourself to a certain degree?
Well, there was some level of reacquaintance because I left home when I was 15 and came back, at age 34. So that was a different experience. But also it was incredibly impractical to make this film in Texas because I was also living in Berlin. And I think the film was stuck for about 2 years with the first producer I pitched it to, who wanted to make it for €1.5 million, which is kind of like the average budget of every single film coming out of Germany these days, and sort of insisting that I rewrite it for Frankfurt, which really depressed me because I did try. I tried for 3 weeks or something to rewrite it for Frankfurt or Poland or someplace else that might have some, but because my personal experiences having lived in that kind of a society which really shames poverty in a different way that I think than happens here, although it is starting to happen here too, maybe to an extent, was kind of too important to let go of. So we had to basically, we ended up taking our crew, which was a Berlin crew, to Texas and doing it in San Antonio, which doesn't have much of a film scene, but there's a great and budding, vibrant film scene in Austin, of course, which I knew well from having run a film festival there for several years in my early 20s. So we could bring people down from Austin and then bring people from Berlin and have the base to work. And we worked also with a very small crew, 5 to 8 people most of the time, all living in a house. And we had too many locations. We had way too many locations for it to be practical in any way. But it had to be there, so that's how we ended up doing it finally.
And also, I was at the Q&A that you did the other day, and you were talking about how the film has certain autobiographical elements. And it's like every filmmaker comes from somewhere, a place, and every filmmaker has experiences in their life. So you would presumably say you shouldn't be scared of drawing on direct personal experience when you're writing scripts?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that there's a slight trap of then wondering yourself if you are able to talk about things outside of yourself. But I think through research, there was a very long research period with other people in addition to myself. The film is about a teen pregnancy. I was a pregnant teen in Texas, which has a pretty conservative approach to many things, and also a wonderfully hospitable. And anyway, I love Texas, but it's got its problems like other places do too. What was the question?
Because filmmakers sometimes are nervous about drawing too directly upon what happens to them because maybe they think it's...
Well, I think also before this I directed someone else's script, which was very interesting to do, and for both projects I did a lot of workshops with actors, acting scenes that were done, like happened outside of the movie, and just asking them to tell me what they thought about the characters. And I think that if you're able to tap into a universal story, whether you're reenacting to an extent certain things that happened in your own lifetime, or if you're working on someone else's story, you're able to tap into a kind of universality, I hope, and not just be sort of looking at yourself. I hope. I don't know. We'll
I remember a comment by Flannery O'Connor, the writer from Georgia, I think she was from, said that anybody that lives to the age of 20 has enough experiences for a whole lifetime of fiction. So.
Yeah, well, fiction, but there's also a song by Willie Nelson where he says, like, if you haven't, he's just like, if you don't have a story, then you've got to know something to be able to sing something. I think that you can make films, and you can make beautiful films, but they do have to be about something. Maybe they don't. I mean, there's a certain also aestheticism, which I think might be in response to the sort of, like, everybody can make a film more and more. You'll see a kind of, like, film being treated as a fancy cheese where you're supposed to appreciate a certain kind of film, and you're told what film you're supposed to appreciate, and it's almost as if now that everyone can make films, only a few people's films are supposed to be any good, and I really disagree with that. I'm glad that a lot of people can make movies, and I would embrace a de-snobification of cinema as it's something so terribly different from reality TV or other things. I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities actually between what happens in cinema now and what happens in more Facebook and progressive pop culture that, where I like to see and people encouraged to make films and less pre-selection, I guess.
I mean, obviously that brings in, because Thomas, your film was made in this, am I correct in saying you made it without funding from official bodies?
We actually got a bid from the Film Institute, the Vestdanske Filmpulje. They gave us $40,000, even though we're not supposed to talk about money. But yeah, that wasn't real money.
But before that, when you actually were developing the film, you were developing it as purely a self-created concept?
We didn't write a whole lot of explosions because we knew that it was going to be very tight no matter what. But we actually had 200,000 kronas really fast, actually, way before the script was finished, and we knew that we are going to get a camera, we are going to get a house, and we are going to use our summer shooting something. And luckily we got a bit more, and things started to work.
You got a speedboat?
We got a speedboat.
Was there ever a temptation to blow up the speedboat for the trailer?
No.
And you were saying that the script was there. Watching the film, it does feel there's lots of improvisation. So to what extent were you able to kind of go with that and run with it and let the characters do that? Was there improvisation, or was everything that we see very carefully scripted?
No, that wasn't. The actors had no lines at all. They had like a treatment where like every scene was described with like 10 lines, 15 lines, I think, and that was it actually. But a year before we started shooting, we had a 100-page script that we threw away before shooting. The actors never got to see that, but somehow the lines from the script and the feel, and it ended up in the film. I don't know how. But.
In your films, improvisation or script, what was the level of that, and how did that impact on getting money, and also on the kind of just the basic creative development of the film?
It was very, very different from scene to scene. And I mean, the film, like Micah just said, I went to film school in Berlin, so the film was funded solely almost by the film school. I mean, we didn't have very much money. We had some cash, but we had cameras, and we had a couple of cars, and like we had sort of the basic and the post-production. We had like, it was a big privilege to have all that, and then no one got paid, and so that's sort of the practical side of it. But the script, like the scene that we just saw, that was the script. I mean, the script was they sit in a pizzeria and talk. We look, we go 180 degrees and we see the guys making the pizza. So that dialogue was improvised. I just knew what sort of mood that Sarah, the main character, had to be in, and also I had there's scenes with the teacher there that are much more scripted, where there was a dialogue, but I never. Sophia plays the teacher in the film. She's the only actress, and she had the script. I sent her the script, and she read the lines. But Annika, who plays Sarah, she never saw the script. I think I gave her a treatment also, but I didn't. And it was an advice from another filmmaker who also works a lot with non-professionals, like never give them the actual dialogue, because they'll stick to the written word. They can't let go the same way that an actor can do it. So it's very, 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 it just varied from scene to scene. Like some scenes, there's a very documentary. I mean, the style of shooting them was very documentary style, like not controlling the situation at all. And Matilda, the camera woman, just really me being close to her and saying, let's look there, or.
Like the scenes in the sugar factory, which have if I played them, people would think it's just from a documentary film.
Oh no, we went there 3 times and had tours, because I mean, a sugar factory is a high security area, you can't, and it's because it's Danish. No, it's Nordic sugar. The main seat is in Germany. You have to get cleared. You have to walk around. We could only be in certain areas, and we went there 2 times and to figure out what we wanted to shoot. And I mean, of course, we didn't. I can't direct the sugar beets how they're falling, but you just wait for whatever's happening. And there were some of the guys that are in the sugar factory. They were, because we knew that they were going to appear at a different time, and they were very much directed. But also obviously so. There's one guy walking sort of John Wayne-ish through the image, which I really liked. 15
takes of the John Wayne walk.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just sort of walked around in and out, but it was very. It was really very varied depending on what scene we were shooting.
And Micah, I know that it's a similar situation in your film because you have some professional actors and non-professional actors. Yeah. And I think with this kind of new initiative in Danish cinema, this could also bring in kind of the use of non-professionals. From your perspective, obviously the main actress, Devon, I think her name is, she had never acted before. How is it from your perspective in the creative sense of bringing together established or recognisable actors that we might see in other films and completely fresh people?
Well, I kind of treat all of my actors just as people regardless, so I gave all of my non-actors the full script and just spent a lot of time getting to know them beforehand, so there wasn't any of this I know more than you do about the film, and I kind of wanted to avoid the film knowing more than them, but to let them know maybe more than the film. So I encourage my actors to spend some time by themselves together, especially if they had a romantic interest, so that they'd have something of their own, and that they weren't kind of reflecting through the camera back to me, but had their own things going on, which I think might give it a more improvised or documentary feel than is actually, well, it is there, I guess, but it's not, it's not because they don't know what they're doing. They are, I think, actually quite acting, and then just drawing on their own personal experiences to know what I can parallel them to in the script, because none of them had experienced similar things, so they didn't necessarily know much about it, but Devon could, there's a birth scene in the film, Devon could equivocate that with being beaten up, because she'd been beaten up, so she could take things from her own experience, and all those kids had experienced quite a lot, to tell something from their own lives through the story. And then another thing we did quite a lot would be to pair a real happening with something which was scripted. So there's a scripted scene in a car where she's has an argument with the second boyfriend that she has in the film, and there she's in fact learning how to drive. and then there's a little microphone, so I can feed them lines. I would feed them lines a lot also. So they had the script in advance. We did a lot of improvisation off camera, and then they could come back to the script if they wanted to, but could also say what they wanted to if they wanted to. And I could feed them lines all the time. So several times there's lines being fed. There's a lot of live directing happening, I guess, as well.
And at what point in the creative process, in the script writing process, did you have the idea that these particular characters would be played by non-professionals who hadn't acted, or was that something that was always in your mind?
Never. But I think that the location actually had a much larger influence on the film than I had envisioned going into it. And so although I had offers from more established actresses and actors for the youth roles, it was so important for them to know where they were and who they were, in a way, they themselves were, that there was no way that even a very talented actress from LA faking a Texas accent could ever play that role, you know?
And in your film, is it the similar case that everybody there is from Knoxcoff, so that you can draw upon there, as Michael was saying about San Antonio, you're kind of drawing on local knowledge and local people?
Yeah, like all the kids, all the young people are all from Knoxville. They all go to the school that we shot in. They all, like the friends that play the main character's friends. They are her friends. So they have their all. I mean, they all know these, like all the like the pizzeria that's where they go to eat their pizza, and the school, and where they go out, and like they know all these spaces, but then which I thought was very important, that they're just acting, they're just themselves somehow, but in constructed scenes, or we're staging it, and I think it was really fun working with them, because they're very. I don't know. I also didn't do really casting in the sense. I tried to cast, or I had to cast, or wanted to find Sarah who was going to play Sarah, and that was a little bit more extensive. But everyone else that sort of signed up we had this sort of post say we were looking for people to be in the film, and everyone who signed up, they're in the film. And I basically talked to everyone for half an hour. That was the casting, and I was just really interested in all of them.
Because some people would say, why make a film about Knoxcoff, and who cares about people in Knoxcoff? Did you have to overcome those sorts of things from your schools? Like, oh no, you've got to make a film in Berlin. This is much more interesting.
Not at all. No, no one knows Knoxcoff. It's just exotic, or no, I had to sort of argue, why do I have to go to Denmark? Because it's going to be a lot more expensive than going to Brandenburg. And I don't remember I'm sure I had good arguments. I don't remember.
And for you, Micah, when you were going to San Antonio, did people say, small town Texas? Oh, actually, it's quite a big city.
Yeah, it's pretty big. But no, like I said, there was this just sort of waiting out my first producer, and then having the script back again, and then being able to, I think when we went into making it, we went over with a small grant from the New York State Council for the Arts, and then planned to make it sort of on food stamps, and then shortly before shooting we got a regional grant from the Medienbord Berlin-Brandenburg, which also came through the school. So that was, there was no question after I had made up my mind, but I think what I learned from that process was just that once I myself, and kind of like, was it Ali was talking about this moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to make a film now no matter what, and then you get a certain energy that says, I'm making a film now, and then people so unconsciously or consciously go with you for that. So at the moment where we were living in the back of a church with the kids and ready to make the film on the food stamps, then people were willing, they could see that we believed in what we were doing, and we were going to do it anyway. And then and at that point, a lot of doors opened up to be able to do things to be able to bring in our German crew. Basically, that's what the Medienbord funding did, was give us money to bring over the cinematographer we'd been working with for a long time, and rent a house.
And when you say making a film on food stamps, I mean, is that literally you would use food stamps to get money? What does it mean?
Actually, food stamps, you don't get much food stamps in Texas either. But just like, because obviously we all have to support ourselves as well. And I had 2 kids then, I have 3 kids now. So if you're not, if your work is as full-time as this work is, you either have to have an extremely low overhead or a second job. And if you have kids, it's hard to have, like, I do have a second and third job, but I mean, like, you can't take a 4th job, so that's where the food stamps come in.
And Thomas, you went to film school, did you, or not?
No.
You didn't?
No.
So how do you feel, because it's unusual to have a director who didn't go to film school these days. It used to be the norm. I mean, then, of course, Coppola and the Scorsese crowd kind of came up either through Roger Corman or through film schools. Is it now the sense that you can actually just get up and do it? Do your friends see themselves as, well, if he's done a film, I can do one? What is the feeling among young people?
I don't know. I think I got rejected for the 2nd time, and I think I'm just going to make my own film school. So the Elite was kind of my film school. Hopefully it will inspire some people to do the same, if we're lucky. All of the crew members, the photographer, cinematographer and producer, editor went to film school and are finishing this summer, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn what they have learned, because they told me, well, in school they say, okay, and I just listened, and I learned a whole lot.
But would it be your intention to kind of use this to get into a film school, or are you happy to plough your own way?
No, I don't think I want to go to film school now. This was my, not that I'm graduated and I have learned all that I can learn. Not at all. Really, not at all. So no, I have no intention of doing that now.
And obviously with this new initiative in terms of the funding of Danish films, as I said in the very beginning, people who've never thought of themselves as filmmakers or community groups or whatever it is might just have the idea, oh, you know, we can do this. And with a film like, with your film, which is having exposure at this festival, I'm sure will go on and play in other places, that is going to kind of, to use the American cliche, 1,000 flowers may bloom. Some of them might be strange flowers, but they will be growing out of the ground. Some of them may be weeds, but at least there are things going to be growing. So do you see optimism there, or do you see as a nightmare of too many films being made?
I want to see weeds. I think that's the kind of film I think that we need, and we need the strange and all the stuff that the people are not gonna pay for. That's what I hope to see. I'm very optimistic about that.
That's a good slogan. Denmark needs weeds. We can put as the official line underneath it. What did you actually do instead of going to film school? Did you go to university? Did you have what was the degree of education, or were you working in jobs? I mean, like I was saying about different jobs.
I worked at a production company since I was 18. I've been editing a lot since I was 18, and I think I could choose to make coffee and pick up actors early in the morning. But editing, I met the directors in another way. I was alone with them. I could ask them all these questions, and that taught me a whole lot, I think. Editing started with music videos, ended up in short films, and now a feature film. I think the time was right for a feature film. All of my friends, if I called them, I would say, hey, let's do a music video, hung up immediately. But this task was so enormous, and so, it was really appealing for them to do the first film.
And so you were getting paid through all of this process, or was there some degree of internship or work experience, or was it always professional work?
Always professional, actually. Yeah.
So instead of you paying to go to film school, you got paid and got to go to a kind of film school. But you two have kind of got through the more kind of orthodox or traditional method of coming through the film school process. Do you kind of envy the freedom that Thomas has had, or do you see the benefit of a more structured development?
Well, our film school is not doesn't have a very strict structure. You sort of build your own structure. I mean, that's
what is the school? What's it called?
The school is the German Film and Television Academy of Berlin, and it's very structured. It has a ground course of 2 years, which is very structured, very schooled. But then you're thrown into the third year, and there's no structure. You have to do a certain amount of classes, and you have to do a film at one point, which is the one I did now. I mean, it took 3 years to do, and it's just it can be quite sort of harsh when you get thrown out in the third year, because you suddenly have there's no bottom, and you have to build your own structure. You have to, and I mean, what Mike was just saying, it's like you decide to make the film, and then that energy that, okay, I'm just going to do this, and no matter what, I'm going to shoot in November 2011, 12, whatever it was, and you sort of do it, and you have to learn that. I mean, so I've had a lot of, or I feel I mean, Mike, you can also, a lot of freedom, and that in our school there's no assignments in that sense. You really just do what the kind of films you want to do. I mean, you sort of have to trick a little bit I had to trick sort of a little bit to make a feature, and saying, well, we're sort of going to shoot documentary style, so maybe it's gonna, they have certain rules, but they're very bendable.
So there was pressure for you to actually make a straight documentary?
No, but this is like bureaucracy. There's like a rule that for that project, which is called an individual film. It's the main course project before your graduation film. If you make a documentary, you can make an hour-long film, but if you do a fiction film, you can only do 30 minutes. That's just, I mean, it's just, it's just rules. So we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna, do a 45-minute documentary fiction film, sort of.
I would totally recommend this school. I mean, I think it's worth noticing that both of us are like not in our home country making films, but went there and were able to do the films that we wanted to make in our home countries through the school. The one good thing about the school is that it very rarely has a director, because they keep getting kicked out by the students. We went through. It's also the school where Harun Farouki started, and it has a long tradition of both political filmmaking and experimental filmmaking, and they bring in really fabulous directors who stay for like 2 weeks and then they're gone again. You have no relationship to anyone except for yourself, because the people are just gone, but you spend some time with them, you look at how they're making their decisions, and then you can kind of figure out your own things from there. And it's free, which was my deciding factor. I would never have been able to pay for film school in the States, and so for me it's an absolute luxury to be able to be, I mean, learning German is nothing if you're going to get you don't pay for the school, you get small budgets to make your films, and you're not paying for equipment or post costs. So I would highly recommend that school to anyone who, and they're loose, they're a bit loose. They have.
At this point, I think we'll bring back Ali and Jakob. Are they still location? In your film, Sonia, it looks as if the whole thing was done in one very, very small area. So there was a creative limitation. That was your initial starting point?
At first, we wanted to shoot in Western Macedonia, and we've been there many times, but then our budget was too low to shoot there, so we had to find or build a location by ourselves. And in the end, we shot at the border of Slovenia and Italy. So everything that is happening in the house was shot in the house of our set designer assistant. Nobody lives there, but his family owns the house. And the yard was shot in Italy. So it was a bit difficult, because 1 month we shot everything that was inside, and also when we shot during the daytime, the set designer and his assistant were sleeping in those beds that are now in the film. And the yard we had to build, because we couldn't find a house that would have a yard like that, and I wanted to be really stylized, to look like a prison yard where time doesn't exist, so we had to build it. And the reason why we chose this region, Slovenian-Italian border, is because this set designer and his assistant lived there, and we knew that many people would help them, and they did. So we had to build this yard and the wall and everything, and it was really cheap.
But we're talking about sort of the creative stimulus. So in your project, because you knew you were operating on a certain financial level, did that kind of give you the idea, or was it also that you wanted to tell this particular story about this phenomenon of kind of people being enclosed in their houses because of feuds between families, and that there have been other films made on this subject which can be very expansive? So the actual seed of it, to what degree was that dictated by the resources?
In the beginning, what me and my co-writer Mitya were interested in was this, like I said yesterday, feeling of imprisonment, entrapment. And when we started to develop the script, we had a story editor, we went to EAVE, and it became a very storytelling-based film. So at one point, Mitya said, "This doesn't interest me anymore." And I said, "Me neither," but I didn't have the courage to say it because we already had the money and we were, I don't know, 6 months before shooting. So we just threw away the script and we wrote what we really wanted in the beginning, which was this, not a storytelling-based film, but we wanted to use this story as a frame to make a portrait of this. So it was not, this shooting on one location was not because of the budget. It was because of the type of the film we wanted to make. So not entertain with the story, but something completely different.
To bring Juan in now, one thing that you've all got in common is that your film is showing at CPH PIX. That also applies to you, Thomas, and I'm sure at a future festival we will see Ali's film. In terms of filmmakers who are making films on restricted resources, how does that? I mean, anybody can make a film these days, but how do you get that film to be seen by people? And from your perspective, Juan, how does it work for you to actually get the film into festivals? And how much creativity and resources do you expend on that yourself?
Okay, in this case in particular, actually, I think my case is a bit different because this is actually for Argentina maybe a mid-budget movie. This is the first like industrial movie I've made with unions and everybody getting paid, and I got paid. Actually, I did co-directed a couple of movies before. My first movie we made with $4,000 and we premiered in Venice, so I beat Alex Ross Perry, I think. But after that, I thought I would be able to make another movie, and no, it didn't happen. I mean, that was 11 years ago. So, but with this particular movie, I actually got a little bit of structure. Actually, for one location we rented, it costed more than all the movies before I did combined, just to rent one location for this movie. It was a quite good feeling after so many years of, I don't know, just not being able to choose most of the things I shot, just to say, oh, I like this. Okay, that's okay.
And how did it then get? Did you work with a company that then promoted the film to get into festivals?
Yes, actually, I mean, for this movie we have a sales agent and a festival manager and all those sort of things, which are for me great. I mean, I don't have to do that many things. Just worry about my next project that I have been working on just for like a year. But just when I finished this movie, I could just start working in the next one because luckily there are other people involved in the project that can carry on. So for me, it was a really different and up to now a really happy experience. This film. This is actually the second festival I've been in. We premiered in Berlin a couple of months ago. But this is just the start of the film tour, something like that.
Because obviously, if when you premiered at a festival like Berlin or Cannes or Venice or something, programmers from other festivals will hear about it or see the film, and then will end up in Copenhagen or wherever it is. So, from the perspective of the Berlin school, we have the two representatives of the school's way. How did they go about actually getting the films to be seen? Because I saw Limbo in San Sebastian in September. Is that something that you get involved in that process, or do they have a specialist angle which is able to place films and get them into the circuit?
Yeah, we're very privileged. We have two 2 women working full time in the festival office, and because this school makes tons of short films and produces tons of short films every year, and now also feature films. And I mean, to get it into San Sebastian, there's like, I guess it's equivalent to the Danish Film Institute. It's called German Films, and they sort of organize the screenings of German films for Venice, for Cannes, for, I guess not for Berlin, but they sort of organize. So you submit it to them, and they'll then show it to the programmers. And after it sort of was in San Sebastian, it becomes like the woman who's working there. She's called Lortinette. She's very well connected now, because there's another film. I think it showed. I don't know if it showed last year here or the year before that. It's called The Small Little Cat, The Strange Little Cat. Mm. So after that film, because that just traveled around the world, she had a lot of connections. So I would love to have a festival manager, because I do all the submissions. I just did one this morning because there's like a deadline coming up. So there's a lot of work that I'm doing, and I'm spending I haven't done anything since September, but travel to festivals and preparing another festival, or sort of do the after preparation of a festival.
So it becomes like a full-time job, festival.
It becomes, which is sort of, I'm surprised how much energy and time that takes, and also from not starting a new film, which is, this is one of the last ones I think I'll actually go to, because I can't continue. I mean, I have to make money also at some point. It's really
that's something.
It's like rock bands who end up writing about being on tour.
Yeah.
I remember Thomas Vinterberg when he made his follow-up to Festen. It's all about love, and it was about a man who can't land because he's always in an aeroplane. I was thinking, I don't know how we could possibly have got this idea.
Yeah. No, but it's super privileged that we have this woman, or this sort of office that will, they help promote, and they have all these contacts, and there's a lot of fees we don't pay because they have the school has agreements with them, with festivals, or so she's doing a lot of work. But I think it's different from Maika.
Yeah, actually my film is completely outside of that, because so the film co-owns the school co-owns most of the films, or owns completely most of the films that it produces. In my case, because we went for this regional funding of Medienbrandenburg, we had to have distribution, or at least a sales agent in place, and so the way we kind of got around that was to ask the sales agent to also be our primary producer to submit for the funding. So the Match Factory, which is also, it was the first film that they did as a production company, like as the main production company, and they're also, but now they're doing more, so they started a sort of a production wing as well. And I think that was very important for us, because I don't have those relationships to festivals to get the film seen. Like, I'm pretty sure the Berlinale would not have watched it when they did around Christmas if it were not for the relationships that existed between the festival and the Match Factory. That said, I have the same experience as you do of I think it costs much more to travel to festivals than, it's always an expense. It's a personal expense, it's a time expense. So I think it affects who you see at festivals, and yeah, it's unfortunate that there's not more funding to help the filmmakers completely in getting there, and also maybe to pay a per diem or something, so that you're not losing money by being there.
At this point, we can open it up to questions from the audience. I think we have a roving microphone.
Oh yeah. Anyone?
So please put your hands up and wave them around so we can see you. Otherwise, I was going to say to Thomas, listening to all this, does this fill you with trepidation, or is it something you're very looking forward to filling in all these festival applications, or is it one way you're just going to let the film just float off?
I can't wait to fill out those applications. I really can't.
I'm not complaining about traveling, being able to travel around and meeting a lot of interesting people. I mean, and you learn a lot, because I don't have a sales agent, we don't have a distributor, and it's part of, I think, as a filmmaker, I'm really happy I'm doing it now, and learning all this now, and I would just hope that for the next film I do, I'll have someone who does all this, because I'm really glad I know what is the job, what is the work, what is behind it. How does it work? I mean, distribution is just such a big field of his own. Yes, it's super privileged to be around. Also, when it's you can find the money somewhere to do it, and at some point you can't, but then you just have to stop doing it.
I know that the audience, we do have several other filmmakers, as I mentioned at the beginning. We have Yannis Beslemis from Greece with the film Norway, Emina Emel Balci from Turkey, Until I Lose My Breath, and Kiet Livan from Vietnam with Gentle. If any of them have anything to chip in.
And if I can chip in, the director of Flapping in the Middle of Nowhere, also a Vietnamese director, up in front.
And we also have Malu Raymond, the director of Interruption, and Thomas Jacobsen, director of Unraveling. So we have a whole audience full of filmmakers. Yeah, there's everybody here is a filmmaker. Well, this is the democratic nature of the thing. So as I say, those films are definitely worth checking out. And I've been asked to point out that Malu's film Interruption and Thomas Jacobsen's film Unraveling are showing tonight at 8 o'clock in the Betty Nansen Theatre as part of the New Danish Screen initiative.
Just one correction, it's Malu's film and it's Kim Lysgaard's film Murders of Katerina tonight.
Right, okay.
At 8.
So I stand corrected. And you, Ali, you haven't even finished your film yet. And do these sorts of comments, is this something that you ever think about while in the current process, or are you entirely focused on getting the Shelley to be as good as it can be?
I think first time I made my first movie in Iran, I was 20-something. The first thing I thought, like when I wrote the script, was like, I'm not gonna do interviews in Cannes. No. I don't want to waste my time on that. And then then like you start there, and it's like you go there. Okay, I want to get into Cannes, but I would probably go there. It's like, okay, I really want them to ask. And you get more and more desperate the less you get attention. But I think, I don't know, to be honest, it's, a big part of filmmaking is hustling,